The scoreline is simple for memory: 3-2, Paolo Rossi, and a door closing. In the summer of 1982, Brazil came to the World Cup in Spain as one of the teams people stopped for. Even if you knew little about Brazilian football, the impression was easy enough to catch. This was a side full of midfielders who wanted the ball, trusted it, and kept the game moving without making it feel rushed. They did not look like a team trying to get through matches. They looked like a team trying to take hold of them. That feeling built quickly. Brazil beat the Soviet Union, then Scotland, then New Zealand. In the next phase, they beat Argentina, the reigning world champion, 3-1. By the time they reached Italy in Barcelona, they did not feel like a charming side or a dangerous outsider. They looked like one of the strongest teams left. They were not moving through the tournament as a reckless attacking curiosity. They looked balanced enough to win it. The football had invention in it, but also authority. The situation before kickoff was simple. Brazil needed a draw to reach the semifinals. Italy had to win. That alone gave the match its pressure. Brazil had margin. Italy had none. Italy scored first. Brazil answered. Italy scored again. Brazil answered again. Then came the third. Rossi's name stayed on the match because it gave the afternoon a hard outline. 3 goals, 1 face, 1 result that could not be argued with. For anyone coming fresh to this story, that is the event in plain terms. Brazil, the team that had looked so fluid and so convincing, were out before the semifinals in a game they only needed to draw. What made the match bite was that Brazil did not really step away from themselves. Even after falling behind, they kept trying to play through midfield. They kept trusting the pass, the extra touch, the player arriving in space. There was pressure, but not panic. There was urgency, but not surrender to chaos. You did not need a tactical board to feel what the afternoon was doing. Brazil kept trying to leave the match open enough for their football to matter. Italy kept making openings expensive. A loose moment, a bad read, a ball not fully cleared, and the day tilted again. Brazil would pull level, and the game seemed to breathe. Italy would strike, and the air tightened at once. The draw requirement sharpened that rhythm. Every Brazilian equalizer seemed to restore order, because for a moment it did. The table leaned back toward Brazil. Then Italy scored again, and the whole emotional balance shifted with it. The match did not simply move from hope to despair in a straight line. It kept offering recovery, then snatching away the comfort that recovery seemed to bring. For those watching in Brazil, this did not feel like just another group match buried inside a tournament format most people barely remember. By then, the team had already become familiar in a very particular way. The shirts, the midfield exchanges, the calm way they held the ball, the sense that they could still play their football when the stakes rose, all of that had already become recognizable. The game against Italy did not arrive as a cold technical hurdle. It arrived with affection already attached to the team. That made the danger sharper. Brazil looked like a side capable of winning the World Cup. On that same afternoon, they were also one Italian move away, at almost any moment, from being out. Admiration did not protect them from the table. Control of the ball did not protect them from the score. When the final whistle came, the shock was not that Brazil had been passive or absent. The shock was that they were suddenly gone. A team so present in the tournament, so easy to recognize, so strongly felt, had reached Barcelona and stopped there. Italy advanced. Brazil did not. Rossi had 3. Brazil had 2. The road that had looked open was shut in one afternoon. The pain of Brazil 1982 did not come only from elimination. It came from the feeling that something admired had been judged. Teams lose World Cups and are remembered by the bracket. This one was remembered differently because the defeat seemed to answer a question people did not want answered that way. Brazil had looked like a serious side, but also like a team playing with openness, confidence, and trust in the ball. When they lost to Italy, many people did not treat it as one strong team losing to another. They treated it as pressure on a certain belief about how Brazil should play. That is why the match entered memory so forcefully. The wound was specific. What had been praised now looked vulnerable to being called insufficient. The loss did not just stop a campaign, it put pressure on the very qualities that had made the team loved. In that sense, the team became a national mirror. Not just how Brazil wanted to win, but how Brazil wanted to see itself. That is what gave the defeat its emotional weight. This was never only about tactics or style in the narrow sense. The 1982 side came to hold a version of Brazil many people wanted to preserve: expressive, composed, technically free, unashamed of quality. Their football did not feel like ornament. It felt like the right shape of the game when Brazil was fully itself. So when that team went out, the loss touched identity as well as support. It also explains why the memory stayed so alive without a trophy to seal it. Winning teams are often remembered because they finished the story. Brazil 1982 remained because the story felt interrupted. People did not just remember the football, they remembered its stoppage. Admiration stayed tied to an unfinished feeling, and unfinished feelings last. The memory stayed alive for another reason too. Different audiences could store the same team in different ways without letting it go. Inside Brazil, the wound stayed close to identity and self-recognition. Outside Brazil, the team could become a paradox first, the famous side that did not win. Those two memories were not the same, but they fed each other. The more the world repeated the beauty of the team, the less the defeat disappeared. That afterlife was sharpened by a harsh contradiction. The team most admired for playing freely could now be used as a warning against freedom. Praise did not protect them once the score turned against them. It gave the defeat a sharper edge. That is also why the argument never fully closed. For many, the team remained proof that football could still be generous, ambitious, and serious at the same time. For others, the defeat remained evidence that admiration and success are different things. The memory endured because it held both claims at once. It was never only tribute and never only regret. So 1982 lasted not as a simple legend, but as an open emotional dispute. The match ended in Barcelona. The meaning did not. What survived was the uneasy thought that a team could play in a way people deeply loved, lose once, and leave behind a memory that felt both beautiful and accused. That afterlife grew larger because the World Cup gave one defeat the power to settle far more than a place in the bracket. What happened in Barcelona did not stay there as a rich football process full of texture and contradiction. It moved outward in a cleaner form. The World Cup does something domestic football rarely can. It strips away the local density around a team and sends out a harder image. Most viewers outside Brazil did not know the club histories behind those players or the internal football world that had shaped them. They received something simpler and more durable: yellow shirts, a fluid midfield, visible quality, then abrupt elimination. Once a team enters memory in that form, it becomes easy to replay and easy to cite, even by people far from the culture that produced it. That compression mattered. Brazil 1982 circulated globally less as a living football process than as a sequence. First came admiration, then expectation, then Italy, then exit. The fuller the team was in reality, the easier it became for memory to flatten them into evidence. A living football idea became a portable argument. The timing made that easier still. The game was already becoming less forgiving without ever announcing a clean break with the past. Space closed faster, mistakes cost more quickly, matches offered less room for a team to slow the rhythm and settle it on its own terms. Brazil did not lose because beauty had been formally rejected. The shift was quieter than that. The modern game does not ban beauty directly, it reduces the conditions that let it breathe. Once the result arrived, the scoreboard did the rest of the hard work. It gave later football culture a single blunt object that could be used again and again without preserving the team's full complexity. The contradiction remained cruel. The team most praised for playing freely became the lesson used to justify playing less freely. Admiration remained, but it stopped protecting the team from being turned into warning. The score did not erase the beauty, it made it easier to prosecute. That warning carried unusual weight because it came stamped by the World Cup. Club football can leave room for revision, local argument, and partial memory. A World Cup match fixes a national team in front of the whole world at once. Barcelona did not stay inside Brazilian grief. It entered international football memory as usable proof, simplified, selective, but powerful enough to travel, and powerful enough to return whenever the argument opened again. What began to disappear was not flair in the abstract, but the collective permission to slow the game down from within. So Barcelona endured as more than a defeat. It became the place where one version of Brazilian football could be admired, judged, and never fully spared. Where a single afternoon kept being asked to explain far more than one afternoon ever should.